I think that's getting a little ahead of yourself. I think that,
Well,
particularly
I'm
in
kind
the case of Libya, for example, that government doesn't control the country. It doesn't.
No.
It only controls a small fraction of the country.
Why were we
And
in
I
such
think
a hurry to get rid of Mubarak?
if we were to not to give them the $20 million that they're supposed to get, we would weaken them further, and we would reduce whatever relationship they have with us, almost driving them towards someone else. I don't know who else, but it wouldn't be us. I think what we have to do is work with the Libyan government as long as they are really trying to get control and to find the people responsible and to turn them over to us. If these 4 guys who have been arrested are being held by the Libyans and we have access to them for purposes of questioning, then I think that's just fine. And I hope that our people would not shy from whatever form of questioning is required to get the rest of the information. If it turns out that they're the wrong people, waterboarding isn't going to hurt them. If it turns out they're the right people, waterboarding will get them to tell us what we need to know.
Quickly.
Because we need to find the other people. We need to get them to tell us everything that they know, everything that we want to know, and then we need to turn them into fertilizer.
Well, and that's my point. You say, Sally, that they're a bunch of bozos and, whatever, but think about this, though. The guy gets on a plane, tries to light the thing with his shoes.
I know.
What was that guy's name? Richard something?
Reed?
Was it Reed?
No, Richard Johnson. I can't remember, but he was the shoe bomber.
Right.
Yeah, I think it was Reed. I think she's right.
So that hurt us
Yeah.
in terms of going on an airplane.
Well, and now look at, they've shut down colleges in America by
Right.
calling in threats, and they don't even have to really do anything. Just threaten that they're gonna do stuff, and we're all on edge, we're closing down buildings, closing down colleges. This has to stop.
Well,
I'm
let me ask
sorry,
you
but
this
I
too.
think profiling is kind of a good and effective way to find out.
Well, you may be right in a way, but you got to remember, terrorists could be of any color, any
Absolutely.
persuasion.
But let's face it, you haven't seen a lot of 66-year-old white ladies bombing anything in this country.
No, but we have 66-year-old ladies in India that'll blow themselves up.
Absolutely.
To try to take out the Indian government. We've
No,
seen that over and over again, right?
That is true, but if you look at the United States, the terrorist incidents which have either occurred here or have almost occurred here and have been stopped, have almost without exception, there have been a couple of exceptions, but almost without exception have been conducted by individuals who would have been caught through profiling.
So, what you're both saying makes sense, but if you do profiling, what about Timothy McVeigh? He was the patriot, he was the conservative, he doesn't trust the government, he wants to be the government, goes in there with this, I forget the name of the truck, but the rental truck, and blows up the government building. All these people died, and here we were thinking it was terrorists. The guy in Colorado, Aurora, Colorado, another guy, white, young guy, goes in a movie theater, opens up gunfire. So
Those are 2 instances.
but those are big ones.
They're very big ones, but on the other hand, what Stan just said is, if we were profiling, a lot of things would not have happened. Over in Europe, they have no trouble at all profiling. I mean, they got people all over everywhere. Every airport I ever flew into, you look around and you can see people are watching.
Well, I disagree.
Try to get on an El Al flight.
Yeah, no kidding.
I know.
And see what happens. If you fit their profile, you get checked right down to the fillings in your teeth. How many terrorist incidents have taken place on El Al aircraft?
Well, but I mean, how extreme have we been to at airports? These body screenings.
We're doing it because we don't profile. The Israelis profile. I mean, they're looking all the time.
This may sound extreme, and you're a Republican, I'm a Democrat. Okay? That's clearly established. But my feeling is, if you kill our U.S. ambassador, what's the difference if you kill our U.S. ambassador or you kill our Secretary of State or another higher up executive in our government? We're sending these
There are a couple of destroyers
over to the
missile arm destroyers.
Probably have
right,
rubber guns.
right outside the. What does that do? He's dead. I mean, now we'll shoot at you the next time. Why not do what Israel does and launch a couple of missiles. Look, we don't know who's who.
See, that would be something I
You
could
know
do.
what though?
But
Okay.
at what, Henry? I mean, the point
At
is-
what? You've got people ripping our flags, burning. You got people killing our officials.
No, I'm
And
talking about Libya, that's where the destroyers are.
I understand that. What I'm saying is, it sends a message to the Muslim Brotherhood, Al Qaeda, and all these others that if you are going to use us as targets,
We're gonna target back.
did they show any reservation when they drove those two planes out of Boston right into the Twin Towers?
Not a bit, and that's
No,
the
I'm not
difference.
talking about showing reservation, I'm talking about killing the right people.
That's right.
It won't do us the least bit of good in Libya to drop bombs or have a battleship sail up over there and drop 16-inch rounds onto, Tripoli or Benghazi. Or
Well, I'm not saying
You
go
kill a lot
hand-to-hand
of, you kill a lot
combat.
of innocent people.
Really?
There's no point. What you do is you spend the time and
Kill a
the
lot of
effort
innocent people.
to find the right guys.
How many people are innocent in this country that were murdered by Al Qaeda at
Doesn't
9/11?
matter. Doesn't matter. It's true, they were innocent, and everybody who either conducted it or who planned it is either in our hands now or dead. This is a good thing. When we find these guys in Libya, then we drone them, or we send in a SEAL or a Delta kill team, and we kill them when we mount their heads on pikes.
And
That's
that's
fine.
something they would
me ask you a
understand.
question.
They
What
would
would-
totally
What would
understand.
Ronald Reagan have done? I mean, let's be real about this. You think Ronald Reagan would say, introduce the Secretary of State, in this case Hillary Clinton, and then say, well, I know a gentleman that I'd like to introduce you to that has something to say about this. And that's President Obama. You really think Ronald Reagan would have Donald Rumsfeld or somebody in front of him,
No.
introducing him, and then go to Las Vegas and do an interview with Snooki?
Look,
Because he was a
Before the
president.
ambassador's not even buried yet? I'm sorry.
Ronald Reagan was a president who was a true leader. And the longer we get away from the day that he died, the more people will understand what he really did for this country. Obama leads from behind. He lets everybody else make all of these decisions. He dithers around. We don't know what he thinks or what's going to happen because he hasn't come out and told us. But he's appearing in fundraisers and going all over.
And exactly, and Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, wants to meet with Obama.
He's busy.
He turns his back on him, yet he's willing to meet with the president of Libya, I think.
And the
of New
Muslim
York.
Brotherhood.
The Muslim Brotherhood. I don't understand that.
Look,
Neither do I.
a great deal of the problem that we're having in the Middle East right now is a result of Obama's policies.
And what's wrong with it?
Let me
Go ahead.
explain something
Yeah.
to you about how Muslims view the world. They are a highly individualistic culture. This is true for all the Islamic nations. It's highly individualistic. Everybody who isn't you or really, really close to you is to some degree an enemy. He cannot be trusted. He or she will betray you if it's in their interest to do so. The farther away you get from yourself, the less you can trust them, the more likely they are to become an enemy. Foreigners are either to be feared because they're strong or preyed upon because they are weak. What Obama did when he went to Cairo was announce that he was weak.
Let me ask you a question.
And the Islamic world sat there for a little bit and watched and waited to see if he really was going to run things like he's weak. And he did. And now they're preying on him. And there isn't a damn thing he can do about it or will do about it because the man is, in fact, weak.
What did Ronald Reagan do in Libya? Can someone answer that for me?
When there was an explosion of a bomb in a nightclub in Germany which killed some Americans, and it was shown that that bomb was planted by Libyan intelligence agents. He had aircraft fly over and drop bombs on Gaddafi's home and headquarters.
Killed one of his grandchildren.
And killed one of his grandchildren, and we would have gotten him. But he happened, unfortunately, to be in the basement of his house at the time where there was a big, heavily constructed sand table where they moved sand around to set up geographic situations to do mock battles. And when the bombs began to fall, he dove under that table, which was strong enough to support the debris that fell on top of it. And when they cleared it away, there he was, alive.
Let me ask you this, and then Sally, you can jump in.
Bad luck.
Yeah.
I lost my train of thought.
We're sorry.
Yeah, that's why I was trying to interrupt you. What about the situation with Israel? If it was the Israeli ambassador into one of these countries, I don't think they would have
We
anybody
already
there.
know what would happen there.
No, you tell me, what would happen?
Instant.
Well, this happened once before. There was a time when the PLO occupied all of Libya. This was in the, or, I'm sorry, all of Lebanon. This was in the early 80s. There had been firing back and forth across the border. An American diplomat negotiated a ceasefire between the PLO and the Israelis. And that ceasefire was holding when the Israeli ambassador in London, I believe it was London, was assassinated.
Yes.
He wasn't even assassinated by the PLO. He was assassinated by Hamas, which was a rival of the PLO at that time. Nevertheless, the Israeli army invaded Lebanon.
And he wasn't even an ambassador.
They fought their way all the way up to the surrounding. They drove the PLO back down into the suburbs of Beirut. I was there at the time, and eventually the PLO had to be evacuated out of there. But the Israelis were situated in the mountains, firing down onto the city with artillery and flying over and dropping bombs, dropping flares at night. Kept me awake too. Keep the people awake at night and generally harass them. The Israelis took direct action. Now they took direct action against everybody.
That's what I was going to say.
They didn't concern themselves about collateral damage.
Right.
But it had the effect of driving the PLO out of Lebanon, which is what they wanted.
Because the Lebanese people pushed him out.
Well, no, because the Israeli army pushed them out. The
Right.
Lebanese, it weakened the Lebanese. We put some Americans, more Americans in there also.
And how many
afterwards?
soldiers?
But when we withdrew, after the bombing of our
1983, I was going to say,
yeah,
we lost
after the
what,
bombing
300
of
American
our
soldiers?
embassy and the Marine House there, the two different bombings, when we withdrew, just out of frustration, Reagan had a warship sitting off the coast, firing rounds into the hillside.
See?
And into the, well, it didn't accomplish anything. What it did
But
was it weakened Lebanon to the point where afterward, and for almost all the time afterward, until the present, Lebanon became a Syrian pawn. The real beneficiary of that whole affair at the end was Syria.
Well, Sal, let me turn to you, because he's like the ultimate ambassador insider in terms of the political mechanisms. But from my vantage point, Syria's mentality is, if you kidnap 4 of our soldiers, we'll come in airstrikes and kill 200 of your villagers.
You mean Israel's mentality?
I mean Israel's mentality, I'm sorry. The Israeli government's mentality is, if you kidnap our soldiers or do anything that's going to come into our borders and hurt our people, we will do airstrikes and we will annihilate. It doesn't matter if it's 50 or 100 people, civilians. We don't see the difference. What kind of a message is that send?
I think they do see the difference, but there's such a tiny, tiny little space there that if they were as weak as Obama, they'd be gone by now. They have to do that. They have to do it. There's no other way to say, don't mess with us. Don't mess with us.
Is this really about oil, Stan? I mean, we're giving money to Egypt, we're giving money to Libya, we're help set up these puppet governments that we know are not going to sustain themselves. Is it giving a little bit here, giving a little bit there, making sure Israel's taken care of, but then giving also jets to Egypt? And I don't get that. Why the shell game?
Well, I don't think what's happening right now is about oil. It's true there's a little bit of oil in Egypt. They produce some oil in the Sinai. There's a lot more
No, but
oil in
creating
Libya,
the
but they
instability,
haven't
though.
been producing for...
But like we said earlier, creating the instability.
All right. All right, let's talk about oil for a second. The price of oil is determined in part by supply and demand, but there's
Right.
plenty of oil, and demand is down a little bit now because of the recessions in the West. But the other thing that determines the price is speculation.
Right.
That is to say,
That's-
people bet on oil futures. And right now, with violence underway in the Middle East, even though it hasn't found its way over yet into the Persian Gulf, speculators will be assuming that it could or it will, and I think that will drive up the price of oil further as they drive up the price of oil futures. All right? Now, that will impact our situation here. Oil is already at record prices in the United States for this time of year, and it will drive up the price further. I think we could very easily see oil go to $4.50 a gallon, with those of us who put high-test gas in our cars paying substantially more. Mm-hmm. But we really need to look at this as a corollary to Obama's overall energy policies, because we don't have to be held hostage to the price of oil in the Middle East anymore.